I'm just gonna quickly show the steps I take to prep the block side of the cylinder head. So the first thing I do is I just degrease it, clean it up, wipe it down, get everything loose and dirty off it, and then I just take a good clean new razor blade and I'll just make passes all along the surface, and that's just to get any debris that is stuck to the head off. After that, you can take just a flat bastard file, and you only want to run it in the one direction, so I just go across, take down any high spots that might be like a burr of metal or something from head bolts or whatever, even just a bag casting mark somewheres on the edge. So I take that down, and then I take my sandpaper and block of wood here, keep even pressure, and this is just to remove any high spots. Now you can use like plate glass, you can use a good square hard piece of wood, you can use a square bar that's nice and flat, and that's just going to take down any of the material that is high. And you can, if you grab a Sharpie or something or some machinist dye, spray it on there. I'll do that in a sec, and then we'll just wipe it across and see. You can see if there's highs and lows. Alright, so I'll just take this Sharpie and I'll just squiggle some lines here. Go all the way across. Now this won't really help you much if you do have a twist, but it will tell you, it'll give you a visual idea of if you do have any kind of twisted or warped or really high, really low spots, anything that would require machining as opposed to just doing a quick resurface like this. So this is just checking the surface. And going across, and you can see micro scratches going through that Sharpie there. And if the scratches are all going evenly and you can get rid of all that Sharpie evenly, then you know you've got a nice true and flat area. And then you just want to take something really straight like a machinist rule or a good square sharp edged level, just so that you can see and use a feeler gauge to check for any deviations across the width and the length of the cylinder head. And if that all checks out and you're within spec, then you're good to toss the head back on with a new gasket. So I just finished doing some passes with that sandpaper and that block, and you can see, barely see what's left of the permanent marker here. So it's all come down evenly all across the cylinder, the face here. So this one, I'm just gonna double check with some feeler gauges, make sure it's all true and that there isn't any spots that are missing. Right now it's obvious that it looks nice and square, nice and flush. So I shouldn't find any problems with this one. I still gotta do the valves in this, gotta clean them all up, do lap the valves in, new valve seals, springs, all that stuff. So this is just what I do ahead of time to make sure that the head is still good before I do any other work with it. So we left off with this cylinder head. We just had checked the bottom for squareness after making sure everything was all cleaned up. So this is all good and true. No major defects here that we need to worry about. Can work on disassembly of the valve train here on top side. So we're gonna remove all the rockers, get all these dirty old valve springs out, clean up what we need to save, just the keepers and the retainers, the rockers, and then we'll toss in the new valve seals and the new valve springs, get this all cleaned up, and that'll be ready to slap back on the engine with a new head gasket. So I just got the valves removed from this cylinder head and just cleaned up in here quickly with some degreaser and a couple scrub brushes so that we could see the surface condition of the valve seats. Get the valves lapped in here and we'll install the new valve seals, new valve springs, and get this side all cleaned up and ready to go back on the engine. Yeah, so I just used the drill there quickly. I buffed up the varnish on the valve stem tips here just to clean those up, make them look nice, and make sure there's no burrs there anywhere that were left from the old O-rings. And yeah, just took some sandpaper, some light grit sandpaper and some fine sandpaper, and took down the carbon on the valves. Cleans them up pretty good. Gives you a good idea if your valves are straight too, if you got a good straight drill chuck, and you can spin them around and see how true they spin, see if there is. It'll definitely be obvious if there's a bent one. So yeah, I just polished up these faces and everything. Now I'm gonna get these ready to lap into the heads. Alright, so that's the valves just lapped in there really quickly using the drill like that, and that is definitely something, you know, do at your own risk. You could easily snap a valve if you push the drill the wrong way, or if your valve guides are worn, then you're going to have a problem. Your seat's going to be all wonky and your valve will never want to seal up properly. So you can maybe see it on the camera there where the dull spot is. In between those two shiny spots, that is the width of the valve seat and the valve face where they mate for the sealing. So that is how they seal up, is right there, and you want that to be right in the middle, and you want it to be about 75% of the total width of that face area, and you want it to be right in the center. So this one's good, right in the center. They all turned out actually pretty well perfect. There's no gouges or any kind of pitting in there that would affect the valve sealing ability at all. So yeah, looks pretty good. Alright, so now that we've got the valves all cleaned up and we lap them into the cylinder head, into the valve seats, we can go ahead and install the valves now, and then we're gonna pop the new valve seals on and install the new valve springs, and then this head should be pretty close to ready to going back onto the engine then. So we'll do that next. All the valves are now in the cylinder head here. I did make sure that each valve went to the cylinder head that I had lapped it into, so all the valves are in the right spot. I cleaned up everything and degreased it before putting all the valves in, and you saw me with these checker springs here. Basically, just with these you can easily determine your installed height. You just put it under the retainer with the keepers in, and it holds the valve closed, so it's all the way up at its highest point. You measure from the valve spring seat to the bottom of the retainer where the valve spring sits, and that is what you need to set your installed height at. So yeah, valve springs are all in with new umbrella and O-ring for both intake and exhaust valves. So yeah, the other cylinder head's already installed with a new gasket, torqued down. This side, just make sure that your block is clean and dry. Give it a final wipe down and blow off. Definitely want to make sure when you install your gasket that it goes on and lines up with the dowels. And you want to make sure that it stays there on its own. It will feel slightly tacky sometimes if you have a gasket like this. That's pretty much just this rubber coating. It's not actually tacky, but dust, dirt, debris, that will all stick to it really easily. So yeah, make sure that you got nice clean gasket, nice clean mounting surfaces, and then we're gonna slap this bad boy on there. There we go, and that's the cylinder head torqued on. I did 70 foot-pounds for these heads with these bolts. They were pre-coated with sealant and a drop of oil underneath of each head bolt. Torque sequence, clockwise rotation from the center outwards, finishing here, starting here, and yeah, that's all there is to it really for the head gasket and head bolt installation there. What I did at the very end, I went around 3 times at the same final torque spec just to make sure that every single bolt was torqued and none had any free play from a previous torque spec. So triple checking like that just verifies to make sure, peace of mind in your head, that you have every single head bolt torqued equally and that there is no chance of really any of them shooting out. So with that said and done, heads are back on the old engine.